We knew what happened in the script. We knew that something came out of John Hurt's chest because his line was, "Oh my goo-ah."
Some stars are born to shine, and then there are those like Sigourney Weaver who must fight their entire lives just to be seen. Hollywood once said, "No one will ever believe a woman can defeat a monster." But they were wrong. Weaver emerged from the shadows of a lonely childhood, where her parents were television legends, yet their daughter grew up in silence, to make history. She was once told by her Yale professors that she had no talent, mocked by colleagues for being too tall, and paid 7 times less than her male co-stars. Yet with one role, Ellen Ripley in Alien, she transformed pain into power. From an outsider, Weaver became the first woman who made the world redefine the word hero. But behind that glory came years of crisis, conflict, and painful choices, when she dared to walk away from the very role that had made her immortal. Why did Sigourney Weaver, at the height of her fame, choose to step into silence? The answer lies in the tragic, yet defiant, journey of her life. Born on October 8, 1949 in Manhattan, New York, Sigourney Weaver, whose birth name was Susan Alexandra Weaver, grew up surrounded by fame and the media world. Her father, Pat Weaver, was the president of NBC and the creator of 2 legendary programs, The Today Show and The Tonight Show, milestones that ushered in the modern era of American television. Her mother, Elizabeth Inglis, was an English actress who appeared in Alfred Hitchcock's classic The 39 Steps. And her godfather, Steve Allen, was none other than the very first host of The Tonight Show, an icon of American pop culture. With such a family, it seemed inevitable that Susan would simply follow the path laid out for her and become another star, basking in the glow her parents had built. But behind the elegant doors of their Manhattan mansion was a very different world, a small, lonely girl in a house far too large, where conversation was rarer than the sound of the television her father turned on every night. Her parents were too busy to be around, and Susan, the bright-eyed girl who always kept her head down as she walked through empty hallways, sought companionship in books, music, and the imaginary world she created for herself. The pages became her refuge, and melodies were her only friends who truly understood her. By the age of 13, she stood nearly 6 feet tall, a height that made her feel out of place among her peers. At school, she was teased and cruelly nicknamed the Giant Spider. Every burst of laughter made her shrink further into herself, and every strange glance taught her to stay silent. Yet that very loneliness quietly forged an extraordinary inner strength, the kind of silent resilience that, years later, would make her performances so authentic when she faced monsters on screen. She didn't need to act fear, she had already lived it. At 14, while reading The Great Gatsby, Susan came across the name Sigourney, a minor character, but one that left a powerful impression on her. Instantly, she chose it as her own, as if cutting the cord that tied her to her family's shadow. The name Sigourney sounded firm, unusual, and distinct, exactly like the person she longed to become. It wasn't just a name change, it was a rebirth. The moment she rewrote her own identity, transforming from her parents' Susan into her own Sigourney. No one could have imagined that this small act of defiance would ignite a journey that would change Hollywood forever, where a woman, once dismissed as too tall, too strange, too different, would go on to embody strength, intelligence, and resolve. But before the spotlight found her, Sigourney Weaver had to endure the bitter years of youth. Years where talent, ambition, and self-doubt coexisted in a body far too big for the small world around her. Sigourney Weaver attended Brearley and Chapin School, two of the most prestigious private schools in New York, where the children of the elite were groomed to become the next generation of high society. She was an excellent student, especially gifted in literature and theater. Yet, amid the neatly pressed uniforms and perfect young ladies, Weaver always felt outsized, not just because of her towering height, but because her spirit never seemed to fit within the box that had been built for her. After graduating high school, Weaver enrolled at Stanford University, majoring in English literature. There, she began to experience true freedom for the first time, living in a treehouse, playing the flute, and joining student festivals dressed as a forest fairy. The daughter of a prominent family suddenly found joy in the simplest things: sunlight, music, and the feeling of being authentically herself. But it was her later time, working on a kibbutz in Israel, that made her realize something profound. Amid endless fields and silence, what she missed most was not comfort, but art, theater, and the thrill of living through other people's stories. Returning to America, Weaver decided to pursue acting professionally and applied to the Yale School of Drama, often called the sacred ground of American theater. She was accepted in the same class as Meryl Streep, who was consistently cast in lead roles, while Weaver was relegated to background characters or elderly women. One professor even dismissed her coldly. "You have no talent. You should quit." But Weaver didn't quit. Instead of trying to please her evaluators, she sought her own path, non-traditional performance. With her close friend and creative partner, Christopher Durang, she co-wrote absurdist plays, surreal, existential, and darkly comedic works that left audiences puzzled and amused. In Titanic, 1976, she played a woman filled with live animals inside her body. In Das Lucatonia Songspiel, she sang about money, smashed a champagne bottle, and became a deranged prostitute amid smoke and laughter. One professor failed her simply because she dared to seduce a refrigerator on stage. While most of Yale saw her as a joke, Durang saw a star. Quietly, he sent their scripts to a New York theater agent, an act both small and daring, yet full of faith. That single risk opened the first door for Sigourney Weaver into the off-Broadway world, where a young woman once labeled untalented began rewriting her destiny. In 1977, Sigourney Weaver made her first on-screen appearance in Woody Allen's Annie Hall. It lasted only 6 seconds, no dialogue, just a fleeting shot of her standing in a beige trench coat on a New York street. The paycheck, $50. For most actors, it was nothing more than a forgettable blur on film. But for Weaver, it was destiny. On set, no one paid attention to the nearly 6-foot-tall woman waiting silently for her cue. No small talk, no demands, no attempt to grab attention. She only wanted to do her job well. When the camera finally rolled, she stood tall, her gaze steady, her stride sure. And in that brief moment, the lens caught something she hadn't yet recognized herself, an undeniable presence, both powerful and elusive. That 6-second shot changed her entire life. A member of the casting team, Juliet Taylor, the film's casting director, remembered her name. Later, it was Taylor who suggested Weaver for a new science fiction project called Alien. No one could have imagined that the young woman once told she had no talent would soon become the face of an entire genre. Just 2 years later, when the first creature burst through a man's chest aboard the Nostromo, it was Sigourney Weaver, and no one else, who would change Hollywood forever. In 1979, director Ridley Scott and 20th Century Fox chairman Alan Ladd Jr. made a bold, unprecedented decision. They rewrote the character of Ellen Ripley, originally written for a man, as a woman, and cast Sigourney Weaver, an unknown 29-year-old, in the role. She was paid $35,000, while her male co-star John Hurt earned $250,000. The pay gap wasn't just a number, it was a statement. Hollywood didn't believe a woman could carry an entire film, much less fight a monster. "No one will believe a woman fighting an alien," studio executives protested. But Ridley Scott stood firm. He saw what others didn't, the quiet power and restrained fear behind Weaver's calm eyes. On the Alien set, Weaver didn't need to scream. She didn't act like a hero. She became the survivor. As the men aboard the Nostromo were killed one by one, Ripley rose not through brute strength, but through logic, intelligence, and sheer will to live. In the flickering lights of the ship, between the hiss of air vents and the metallic clatter, Sigourney Weaver redefined the Hollywood heroine. Not the one who is saved, but the one who saves herself. Alien was a triumph, both critically and commercially. And Ellen Ripley instantly became a global icon. Yet behind that triumph, Weaver had no idea that this role would follow her for decades, both as glory and as burden. In 1986, director James Cameron took Alien to new heights with its sequel, Aliens. This time, Ripley was no longer a victim fleeing in fear, but a warrior, a motherly protector risking everything to save a young orphan, Newt, amid a nightmare of xenomorphs. Weaver entered the role not only with physical strength, but with emotional depth, portraying a woman who had lost everything and now fought not for herself, but for the last fragment of love left in a brutal world. 20th Century Fox, once skeptical of her, now paid her $1 million, nearly 30 times her previous salary, to return. And she rewarded them with a performance that left audiences worldwide breathless. Amid gunfire, explosions, and screams, Ripley's eyes carried a haunting human pain. The role earned Weaver an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress, a rare honor for a science fiction film, and established a new archetype of the action heroine, strong, compassionate, and self-reliant. From that moment, Sigourney Weaver was no longer the nameless woman from Annie Hall. She was now the face of a new era, one that forced Hollywood to bow to her power. But after reaching the peak of fame, Weaver realized that her greatest victories didn't come from awards, but from the battles behind the scenes that no one ever saw. Between 1988 and 1989, Weaver reached the most glorious phase of her career, when Hollywood finally acknowledged that she wasn't just an action heroine, but a profound actress capable of plumbing the depths of human emotion. In Gorillas in the Mist, Weaver portrayed Diane Fossey, the real-life primatologist who devoted her life to protecting mountain gorillas in Rwanda. Filming in the humid jungles, she battled malaria and exhaustion, but refused to use a stunt double. The scenes of solitude in the mist, the way Fossey looked at the gorillas as if seeing humanity's reflection. It wasn't acting anymore, it was embodiment. The role earned Weaver a Golden Globe for Best Actress and solidified her image as a symbol of humanitarian cinema. That same year, she stunned audiences again in Working Girl, this time as a ruthless, manipulative boss. The performance, a total contrast to Fossey, was chillingly real. The power-hungry executive, hollowed out by ambition. Weaver won her second Golden Globe, becoming the first actress in history to win 2 Golden Globes in the same night, while also receiving 2 Oscar nominations in the same year, an unprecedented achievement. Yet instead of exploiting her fame with more blockbusters, Weaver chose the harder, quieter road. In The Ice Storm, she was the disillusioned wife trapped in an emotionally frozen marriage, a subtle yet suffocating portrayal. In Death and the Maiden, she became a torture survivor confronting her abuser in a harrowing psychological duel. One director called it emotional surgery on film because Weaver didn't express pain through tears, but through the paralysis of the soul. She turned down major hits like Total Recall and The Silence of the Lambs, roles that could have made her even more commercially powerful, simply because, as she said, those characters had no soul. Weaver didn't crave more money or fame. She wanted truth, something increasingly rare in a cold, profit-driven Hollywood. But just when her career seemed to be at its brightest, fate pulled her back into the nightmare she had created, the monster that made her famous. And this time, the battle wouldn't be on screen, but behind it, in a war of power where movie studios were far more terrifying than any creature from space. After her golden years, Sigourney Weaver entered the most difficult phase of her career. Alien 3, 1992. The film was initially conceived as a philosophical, allegorical story, a wooden monastery on a distant planet where monks lived in isolation, and Ripley, the last survivor, crash-landed among people who rejected technology. But just weeks before filming, 20th Century Fox abruptly scrapped the entire concept for lacking commercial potential. The setting was changed to a prison. The young director, David Fincher, barely in his 20s, was forced to work under relentless studio supervision. Every scene required approval from an internal review board. The script changed daily, and amid the chaos, Weaver became the only person strong enough to defend the spirit of Alien. She shaved her head for the role, endured allergic reactions to the disinfectants on set, and constantly clashed with the studio to prevent Ripley from being turned into an empty commercial icon. Weaver wanted Ripley to die with dignity, not as an action hero, but as a human being ending the nightmare on her own terms. Fox, however, wanted Ripley alive for future box office profits. The result was a silent yet fierce war, one Weaver lost on paper but won in spirit. The studio retaliated by removing her name from the co-producer credits and launching a crude marketing campaign, which hurt her so deeply that she refused to attend the premiere. Later, Weaver described Alien 3 as a film with a brave heart buried under the studio's cold concrete. Yet despite the wounds, Ripley's final sacrifice in flames brought millions to tears. Weaver earned Saturn Award and MTV Movie Award nominations, but more importantly, she was recognized as the soul of the Alien franchise, the one person who made audiences believe in humanity amid industrial hell. In 1997, Weaver returned in Alien Resurrection, directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, but this time, Ripley was no longer human. She played Ripley 8, a clone created from human and xenomorph DNA, half woman, half monster, fierce, primal, and almost emotionless. Weaver captured the fracture between animal instinct and lingering humanity, a performance both chilling and heartbreaking. The scene where Ripley discovers her grotesque failed clones begging for death remains one of the most haunting moments of her career, a fusion of terror, pity, and self-destruction. In one famous take, Ripley tosses a basketball backward over her shoulder and makes the shot. No CGI, no editing trick. When the ball swished through the net on the first try, the entire set erupted in cheers. Weaver wasn't playing Ripley, she was Ripley, fearless, authentic, and entirely her own creation. Though Alien, Resurrection was criticized as strange and alienating, Weaver defended it to the end. I love it because it dares to be different. And that difference was exactly what made her unique in a Hollywood that preferred predictability. In 2004, when Fox sought to revive the franchise with Alien vs. Predator, Weaver flatly refused to return, calling it a film that cheapens Ripley's sacrifice and turns legend into spectacle. She didn't need more money or fame. To her, Ripley was sacred, not a commodity. A decade later, in 2014, Weaver revisited the universe in Alien, Isolation, this time only through voice. She lent her voice to Ripley in a story about her daughter Amanda, continuing her mother's unfinished mission. Weaver said it was the first time she could bring Ripley back, not with a gun, but with fear. Her raspy, weary, yet resilient voice felt like a farewell, a final tender goodbye to a character that had shaped half her life. Ripley was never just a role. For Sigourney Weaver, she was a fragment of the soul, the character who made the world see women not as victims, but as survivors. Yet after closing Ripley's final chapter, Weaver began a new journey, one where she proved that even without a weapon, a woman could make Hollywood fall silent. It was then that the world began calling her the First Lady of Science Fiction. After Ripley became an icon, Weaver experienced a new kind of rebirth. Not in the dark corridors of the Nostromo, but on the luminous planet Pandora in James Cameron's Avatar, 2009. When the legendary director invited her to return, fans knew it wasn't just a reunion, it was a tribute to their shared legacy. Weaver played Dr. Grace Augustine, the film's moral compass, a scientist who bridged humans and the Na'vi through intellect, compassion, and the belief that science only matters in the hands of those capable of love. Beneath Cameron's towering effects, Weaver delivered heartbeat-level realism, a character at once rational, warm, and profoundly human in her quiet death. But Cameron wasn't finished with Grace Augustine. More than a decade later, in Avatar. The Way of Water, 2022, Weaver stunned the world once again when, at 61, she portrayed Kiri, Grace's 14-year-old Na'vi daughter. Without CGI body doubles, Weaver herself performed every movement, voice, and nuance. From the awkward steps of adolescence to the innocent wonder in Kiri's gaze. Critics called it a miracle of acting, where Weaver, through sheer skill and empathy, made audiences forget her age entirely, believing they were watching a real Na'vi teenager breathing beneath Pandora's oceans. Across two cinematic eras spanning over 40 years, Sigourney Weaver remained the reigning queen of intelligence and emotion in science fiction. Yet she refused to be confined to it. In 1999, she starred in Galaxy Quest, a satire of sci-fi and fan culture. There, she playfully mocked herself, portraying a spaceship crew member whose only job was to read the computer. With blonde hair, a tight uniform, and a knowing smirk, Weaver turned the role into a subtle act of rebellion, a jab at Hollywood's gender bias that often reduced women to decorative figures, even when they were the most competent ones on board. Galaxy Quest wasn't just a comedy. It was Weaver's sly smile at an industry that once doubted what women could do on screen. Nearly 2 decades later, she shocked fans again by joining the Marvel Universe in The Defenders, 2017, as Alexandra Reed, the powerful leader of the Hand. Without magic or weapons, Alexandra commanded through intellect, ruthlessness, and icy beauty. Weaver insisted the character feel real, a woman who fears, loves art, and knows that power is fleeting. Under her hand, Alexandra became not just a villain, but a symbol of feminine authority, sharp, logical, and layered. After conquering cinema with iconic roles, Weaver returned to where her artistic soul began, the Broadway stage. In 2013, she starred in Vanya and Sonia and Masha and Spike, a tragic comedy about middle age, loneliness, and the yearning to be seen. Weaver played Masha, a once famous actress now living in nostalgia and fear of irrelevance, a role mirroring her own confrontation with time. During one performance, at the height of emotion, Weaver accidentally fell off the stage, injuring her co-star's ribs. Instead of stopping, she improvised for 7 minutes, seamlessly turning the mishap into part of the show. The audience rose to a standing ovation, and the director later kept the improvisation in the official script. It was a rare moment where the line between acting and living disappeared. Weaver was no longer performing, she was theater itself, raw, real, and unstoppable. Even after contracting COVID, Weaver refused to cancel performances, saying, "Every night on stage is a lifetime, and lifetimes can't be repeated." In her 60s, she carried the same fierce energy she had as Ripley facing the alien. Except now, her enemy was time itself and the fear of being forgotten. In 2021, she made a brief but emotional return in Ghostbusters: Afterlife, a 37-second cameo that brought global audiences to tears. Revisiting Dana Barrett, the character from her 1980s heyday, Weaver declined the offer to use CGI de-aging, instead requesting that her dialogue reflect age, wrinkles, and truth. That fleeting moment, a smile, a glance, a simple line, gracefully closed the arc of a beloved character with dignity and grace. On stage or on screen, Sigourney Weaver has never feared aging, failing, or appearing imperfect. The only thing she has ever feared is stopping the act of storytelling itself. Perhaps that is why, even in her 70s, she has never stepped off the stage of life. Only changed costumes, while the fire inside her burns as fiercely as ever. Every character she's played is a fragment of herself, a woman who has proven that strength doesn't lie in muscle or guns, but in the way a woman sees the world and dares to speak back to it. And yet behind all the glory, Sigourney Weaver's real life follows a quieter, more surprising path. A private existence so simple that few can believe the queen of science fiction has chosen peace over legend. As the glow of fame was settling on Sigourney Weaver after Alien, she unintentionally stepped into a real-life story deeper than any role. A love story between a Hollywood star and a little-known stage director. In 1983, Weaver met Jim Simpson at the Williamstown Theater Festival, a gathering place where young theater artists came to test new ideas. That day, she was a guest star. He was just a director working a temporary backstage job. Neither tried to impress the other. Weaver sat quietly reading a script, while Simpson was pouring drinks for patrons at the theater bar. Yet amid the bustle of laughter and the smell of alcohol, something drew them to each other. A light, honest feeling untouched by the stage lights. They began talking about Chekhov, about theater, about plays that never got funded because they were too real to sell tickets. Weaver, then just past 30, felt lonely in a glittering world. Simpson showed her what Hollywood had lost: simplicity and sincerity. Soon after, they started dating. No paparazzi, no rumors, just evening walks around Central Park, late-night rehearsals, and pages of clumsy handwritten poems. On October 1st, 1984, Sigourney Weaver and Jim Simpson were married in a small ceremony in New York. No reporters, no lavish gown. The bride wore a simple white dress. The groom arranged the flowers himself. They wanted a wedding with no cameras intruding, because they both knew true love doesn't need to be proven by the flash of a bulb. Their marriage has lasted over 40 years, a rarity in show business, where most love stories end in breakups or scandal. Yet, like any marriage, theirs wasn't easy. As Weaver became a global star with Aliens and Gorillas in the mist, film schedules kept her away from home for months. Simpson stayed in New York, pouring himself into his small theaters. At times, they lived in two different worlds, Hollywood's temptations on one side and the harsh modesty of off-Broadway on the other. Those differences once created pauses in the marriage. Weaver has admitted there were moments when she was too exhausted to talk, while Simpson was too tired to listen. Instead of giving up, they returned to where their love began, the stage. They co-founded the Flea Theater in Tribeca, a small space for young actors where art wasn't controlled by money. Weaver would occasionally perform. Simpson directed. Together, they mopped floors, hung posters, and taught kids who dreamed of making a life in the arts. In 1990, they welcomed Charlotte Simpson, their only child, who later chose academia over the arts. Char is a researcher in technology and digital storytelling at Columbia University and identifies as non-binary. Weaver has shared that Char's teenage years were the hardest. "I was filming Avatar while she was applying to college. I was afraid I would miss her youth." The guilt haunted Weaver for years, leading her to consider turning down roles to stay close to family. It was Jim Simpson who helped her keep balance. He wasn't jealous of his wife's fame, nor did he allow himself to be overshadowed. They had their own rules. When Weaver was on set, Simpson wrote letters instead of calling. When he was deep in a production, she would sit in the audience, quietly watching. They believed love didn't always mean being side by side. It meant looking in the same direction. There were arguments, long silences that felt glacial, yet they always found their way back. Weaver once said that after a big fight, Jim never apologized with words. He simply came to the Flea early the next morning and set a hot cup of coffee on her desk. She looked at it and burst out laughing. "I knew that was his way of saying, 'You win.'" Now, 4 decades on, they still appear hand in hand at small arts events, not as a branded Hollywood couple, but as two artists who learn to live together without losing themselves. Charlotte is grown. Weaver continues to act, and Simpson still directs in New York. They devote much of their time to wildlife conservation programs and youth theater education. They don't talk about the secret to marriage. They simply live together with gratitude. In a world where everything feels temporary, the love of Sigourney Weaver and Jim Simpson endures like a stage light, not blinding, but warm enough to last a lifetime. And perhaps, if Ripley is the emblem of strength on screen, then Jim Simpson is the emblem of gentle strength in real life, the one who helped Sigourney Weaver return to being a woman after a lifetime spent as a legend. After years of peaceful living with Jim Simpson and their daughter Charlotte, Sigourney Weaver never truly rested. When the stage lights went out, she didn't turn her back on the world. She looked outward, toward people and nature still crying for help. The quiet love of her family helped her rediscover art's original purpose: to live meaningfully, not just famously. After Gorillas in the Mist, the role that transformed not only her career but her entire life, Weaver was no longer merely an actress. She became the torchbearer of Dian Fossey's legacy. In the film, her gaze, filled with compassion as she sat among gorillas, didn't just earn her a Golden Globe, it left a permanent calling in her heart. After filming, Weaver traveled to Rwanda, met Fossey's former colleagues, and became the honorary chair of the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund, the world's largest gorilla conservation organization. Since then, she has tirelessly campaigned, spoken at events, and led fundraising missions, reminding people that humanity cannot survive without protecting the wilderness within itself. That commitment soon expanded globally. Weaver was appointed a UN Goodwill Ambassador, becoming a powerful voice for climate change awareness, ocean conservation, anti-deforestation efforts, and women's rights. At international conferences, she never appeared as a celebrity, but as a woman who understood the price of indifference. Her speeches were driven by logic, yet her eyes carried emotion, the kind that pierced straight to the heart. In 2015, when thousands protested the Keystone XL oil pipeline, Weaver stood among them, holding a sign that read, "Silence is complicity." She knew she could be arrested, but stayed anyway, because to her, doing nothing was far more terrifying. The queen of science fiction, once seen battling monsters on screen, now stood in real life against a monstrous system, becoming a symbol of unscripted courage. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Weaver didn't isolate herself in luxury. Instead, she turned her Manhattan apartment into a meeting hub for climate activists, a safe space where young voices like Greta Thunberg gathered to plan global campaigns. In rare photos from those sessions, Weaver sits among them, silver hair loose, hands wrapped around a teacup. Not as a star lecturing, but as a mother listening to the next generation of hope. Her compassion extended far beyond environmental causes. Weaver has long been a vocal ally of the LGBTQ+ community, moving audiences to tears with Prayers for Bobby, a film she produced and starred in, based on the true story of a mother who lost her son to homophobia. The film opened thousands of conversations between parents and their children, something Weaver calls the true value of art. She later appeared in Call Jane, 2022, about an underground network providing safe abortions before Roe v. Wade, reaffirming her stance as an artist who fights for women's freedom. For these contributions, Weaver has been honored by the NRDC, Natural Resources Defense Council, Oceana, and numerous international organizations. Yet, she never saw them as accolades, only as a natural continuation of the journey that began with Gorillas in the Mist, the journey of a woman who never stopped fighting for life both on and off screen. After more than half a century straddling the line between art and life, Sigourney Weaver entered 2025 not as a retired legend, but as a warrior still moving forward. In a Hollywood obsessed with youth, she returned in The Gorge, a sci-fi psychological action film released on Valentine's Day 2025. Alongside Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy, Weaver played a mysterious figure behind a secret human experiment. There were no space battles this time. She fought in silence, through her eyes, intellect, and the strength of someone who had weathered too many storms. Critics praised her performance as carrying a blend of nostalgia and inner authority, making The Gorge stand apart from mainstream sci-fi. In certain moments, the camera lingered on her face, where audiences could glimpse the ghost of Ripley, but with the calm of someone who finally understood that the greatest monsters aren't from other worlds, but from within us. Not content to stop there, Weaver also continued working with 20th Century Studios and Ridley Scott to discuss reviving Ellen Ripley in a new Alien installment. The news surfaced at the 2025 Toronto International Film Festival during a special screening of Alien Earth. Standing before the crowd, she said, "I still love Ripley as much as I did the first day, but if she returns, I want her to be older, wiser, and bearing the scars of everything she's lost." Behind these high-profile projects, Weaver remains unchanged in her purpose, to serve something larger than herself. In 2025, she continues fundraising for the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund, attending UN environmental forums, and collaborating with Oceana and NRDC. A viral clip on social media showed her talking with university students about climate change. No script, no spotlight, just a 75-year-old woman speaking with unwavering conviction. Across 5 decades, Sigourney Weaver has achieved what few artists even dream of, turning female strength into a cinematic language. She didn't just redefine women's roles on screen, she changed how audiences see themselves, no longer as those waiting to be rescued, but as those who rise from the ruins and choose their own destiny. Ellen Ripley was never just a character. She became the embodiment of survival in chaos, a metaphor for Weaver herself, a woman who transcended every boundary of age, gender, and power in an industry that once had no room for resilience. Whether as a warrior, scientist, or mother, every role she played carried the same spirit: intelligence, compassion, and proud solitude. And if cinema is a mirror of life, then Sigourney Weaver's true legacy lies in how she lives once the lights go out. At 75, she owns no media empire, runs no acting school, and seeks no flashy comeback. Instead, she nurtures what endures: nature, empathy, and the belief that art matters only when rooted in humanity. Sigourney Weaver has never needed noise to be remembered. She commands respect not for her victories, but for how she walked through fame without losing herself. In a world where heroes often shout, she stands silent. Yet somehow that silence echoes louder than anything else. And perhaps that is what makes Sigourney Weaver a legend, a symbol that needs no statue, for she has already etched her name into the memory of everyone who's ever watched her. If you grew up with Ripley, if you believe human strength lies in courage, not muscle, leave a tribute to Sigourney Weaver in the comments. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe so we can keep telling the stories of those who may have left the screen, but will never leave our hearts.